I live in the UK, and I'm a 19-year-old guy, and I've been working at a bar for the past 2 years. I normally finish very early in the morning. This happened about a year ago, and I'll never forget it. It had started as a normal shift. I got there and started taking orders and making cocktails and all the stuff. And 6 hours went by, and it was about midnight when 2 loud male customers who were in their mid-30s at least came in the bar. They looked like they had been out all day and didn't seem to care what they had said or who they said it to. One of them stood about 6 feet, and he had a slim build. He looked like he was an active drug user or something along those lines. And the other was about 5'9" with an unhealthy build. His face looked shabby, and he had messy hair and yellow teeth. He made me feel uneasy, but I had to do my job. I approached them and asked if they would like to order a drink or anything, and they both just looked blankly at me. I stood there looking at them both silently while music was blaring out of the speakers. I then broke the silence, saying I will come back over in a few minutes to ask again, and I went to another table. About 2 minutes had passed, and they ended up approaching a group of girls about my age and wouldn't leave them alone. You could tell the girls felt uncomfortable. Now, I'm not saying I'm tough or anything, and I stand at about 5'9" and weigh about 140 pounds, so I'm not exactly an intimidating person. But I went over and asked the girls if they were okay, and if they knew these guys who sat with them. They all looked at me, eyes widening, shaking their heads and saying no, and they won't leave us alone. I sternly asked the men to move tables, and if I have to ask again, they'll be thrown out. They suddenly got up and glared at me with crazed eyes. I get this a lot at the bar I work at, so it didn't really bother me. They slowly walked past me and through the exits, and I thought that was the end of it. How wrong I was. The bar closed an hour after that, and we ushered out the rest of the customers so we could clean up at the end of the night. The girls who I helped thanked me and asked for my number, and I politely declined, saying I wasn't interested. After we had finished cleaning up the bar, it was about 2 a.m., and one of my friends asked if I wanted a lift home. But I only lived a 20-minute walk from where I work, so I politely declined and said I would see them tomorrow. I started walking, putting one earphone in so I could listen to some music while walking home. I'd made it about 5 minutes into the walk before I heard a muffled scream coming from a small alleyway to my left. I took out my earphone and proceeded to listen again, and sure enough, I heard it again. At this point, I called out asking if someone was there and if they were okay while slowly moving towards the sound. I pulled up my phone and shined my torch towards the noise. What I saw terrified me. The 2 guys from the bar had grabbed one of the girls from the bar and was attacking her, and for her safety, I'll leave it at that. Her eyes were crazed, pleading for me to help her, and I just stood there frozen. The 2 guys looked at me, and the smaller one said to me, "You'd better turn around and leave, boy, or things are gonna get serious." It snapped me out of my fear, and I said, trying to be as confident as possible, "Let her go, or else." I said these words feeling terrified, and I think those guys could tell because he got up and moved towards me, raising his fists ready to fight. Instinctively, I responded by getting into a boxing stance. He swung his fist at me, and due to him being drunk, I easily moved out of the way. I clocked him on his temple, and he dropped to the floor, smashing his head against the concrete. I turned towards the girl and asked if she was okay until I realized the taller man had moved. He dived at me, tackling me to the ground. I panicked as we rolled around wrestling on the ground for a few seconds, and he pinned me to the ground. He started screaming at me and began punching me. In that instance, seeing his crazed eyes inches away from my face, I thought I was gonna die. And in the corner of my eye, I saw the girl I had tried to save grab a spray and begin to spray it in the man's eyes. He let out a massive scream and fell backwards onto the ground, clenching his eyes. In that instant, I grabbed the hand of the girl and we ran all the way back to my house. We quickly got inside, locked all the doors, and we were silent for a good half hour. I broke the silence, asking her if she was okay and if she was hurt. She didn't reply, just sat there curled up in a ball on the floor. I said to her, "I think we should stay here tonight," and that I would take her to the police station early next morning. She nodded her head in agreement. I gave her my bed. I took some blankets and pillows and tried to fall asleep on the couch, but I couldn't. In the morning, I kept my promise and took her to the police station and gave my description of the men. The officer said thank you and sent me on my way. He assured me he would take care of the girl now. I said my goodbyes to the girl, and she still didn't speak to me. I felt terrible about what had happened to her, but I was glad I was there to help. I had to miss work the next day due to being battered and exhausted from the night before. While I was at home, I saw on the news that 2 men were apprehended by the police and both locked away almost instantly. I hope they get what they fucking deserve. The scariest part of the story is what if I took the ride my friend offered? What would have happened to the girl? I dare not even think about it, and I was lucky enough to save her.